By the end of this video, you will know how to 22 star all of your gear, what points to settle on, and everything there is to know about Starforce. Make sure to save this video for when there's Starforce events so you know what to do and you don't waste your money. And obviously, if this video helps you out, make sure to subscribe and share it with other people. Now, before we get into actually Starforcing these items, I want to talk about some very important things, so don't just skip this part and go towards the items when we talk about it. The first thing is that Starforcing is primarily based off two factors. The first thing is whether there is a Starforce event and when the Starforce event is. Now, if you don't know, on MapleStory, there are Starforcing events that make the chance of you getting 22 stars or higher Starforce higher and less expensive. So ideally, especially when you want to go past 17 stars on your equips, you wait for these Starforce events so that you can save money and up your chances of doing it. Off eventing is trolling. Do not do it. Always Starforce on events, especially when you're going past 17 stars. Everything before 17 stars, if you really need the damage, you could spend off event, but I highly recommend doing things on events so that you can save your money. It is a big difference from somebody who only off events versus somebody who only on events. Now, before I get too ahead of myself, what even is Starforcing for those who have no idea what it is? Essentially, it's upgrading your equips through something called Starforcing, and it increases the stats of your equips and makes you a lot stronger. But the important thing to know about Starforcing is the higher star you get on your equips, the more expensive it becomes, and there's a chance for it to be destroyed. And if the item gets destroyed, it goes back to 12 stars, and you need another copy of the item to continue to Starforce it. So what that means is you need a lot of copies of items to get it all the way to 22 stars. So somebody who only has one arcane cape will have a less likelihood of getting it to 22 stars than somebody who has 5 arcane capes. Easy to understand. The next thing I want to show is Starforce calculators. This one will obviously be linked in the description, and I'm going to show you how to use it real quickly because these calculators are so useful. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to ask me like, but how much do I save? How much money should I have for this star? How much money should I have for that? Look at the calculator. It'll tell you how much money you need. So let's say I want to star an arcane item, which is a level 200 item. Let's say I star catch, which you should star catch because it increases your chance, and I'm safeguarding it, which means that it will guaranteed not be destroyed up until 17 stars. Let's say it starts off at 10 and I want to get it to 22 stars. No MVP discount. And it's a 5, 10, 15 event because I'm a good boy and I Starforce on event. Let's see how much it will cost. So how do I read these numbers, right? A lot of people will just look at, oh, average cost, 29 bill. Okay, that means I need 29 bill to 22 star my arcane cape. This isn't necessarily how you should always look at it because the average cost factors in crazy outliers. Like it factors in the fact that it could cost 1 bill and it factors in the fact that it could cost 300 bill. So the average is like slightly off. The number that I usually tell people is the median because the median, if you line up all the numbers, it's usually the numbers that are around the middle where most people will land. But there's another thing that you should look at that's very important is the percentiles. Just because it says median 21 bill doesn't mean you're gonna land at 21 bill. You're probably gonna land anywhere between like 15 to 30 bill. There's a range to this, and you have to understand that that's just how it is because this is just a math thing. It's just a numbers game, and you're not going to always land in the median. You're not going to always land at the average. You're going to go above or below the average, usually by some amount, and that's just the way it is. Now, I also want to say that some of you might be thinking, oh, but I always go above the average. Every single thing that I do, I'm always unlucky. I promise you, you're not. I promise you, you're not always unlucky, and there are moments where you got super lucky, you just forgot about it because that's how it is. We like to focus on not getting lucky, but trust me, it always averages out. The chance of you actually being somebody like extremely unlucky in everything you do is almost 0%. Next thing you want to look at is booms. Booms matter a lot, like average chance of it getting destroyed, median 1, average 2. So long story short, you're going to need multiple copies, but definitely use the Starforcing calculator because it can tell you how much money you need. For me, what I always do, good rule of thumb, is I always try to get 10 bill more than the median. So if the median is 21 bill, I'm going to try to save around 30 bill per arcane piece, and I'll go from there. That way, like, my odds of succeeding is pretty good. Another thing that's very important to mention about Starforce is between 0 and 15 stars, you don't get any bonus attack from the Starforce. So when you want to star an item, you can see in the Starforcing window how much stats it gets. So from 0 to 1 star, I'm gaining 2 all stat, 5 HP, and 10 defense. Now you will only gain stats like strength, dex, int, luck anywhere between 0 to 15 stars. But after 15 stars, you start getting attack with the stat. So all the stars after 15 give you way more stats than the ones before 15. So that's why people will say like settle 17, you want to go for 22, all these things, because those are the stars that give you attack. So if you look at my hat real quick, from 16 to 17, I'm actually getting 10 attack. And this amount goes up per star. Like 16 to 17, I'm getting 10. But if it was 19 to 20, it would be more than 10. It's not just the same flat attack increase all the time. And the level of the item also determines how much the stats go up. So CRA hat is a level 150 item, but Apso, for example, a level 160 item, even though they're both 16 stars, I get even more attack. I actually get 11 and I get more stats. So the higher the level of the item, the more stats you get from Starforce. And after 15, you start getting attack. So the power increase from Starforce gets stronger and stronger and stronger the higher the star you go. It's not just the same linear increase every single time. Another thing that I want to mention that's very important about this video is this video will be a general Starforcing guideline for mains. So we're not going to talk about like 22 starring Apsos, 21 starring Apsos for Lotus Mules or like C10 Mules or anything like that. A lot of those like Mule funding could be very different than mains. So this is a general Starforcing guide for mains, which means you're going to go for the better equips ideally. Now that we're all on the same page here, let's talk about the different items and what you should Starforce them to. So the first thing I want to talk about are these, what I like to call baby items in quotation marks. So these quote unquote baby items, a lot of these are just like boss accessories that you get, like Horntail earrings, Hillet earrings, Treasure John ring, Horntail pendant, Magnus shoulder, like all this stuff. These are all like very, very, very early game items. And you could star them whenever you want to 10 stars to 15 stars, just as you're progressing through the very early game. And it's not a big deal. They're super, super cheap because they're low level items. And the lower the level the item, the cheaper it is. And it goes the opposite. The higher the level the item, the more expensive it is to Starforce. So since these are like really low level items, like level 110, 120 items or whatever, they're very, very cheap, and it's okay to use them off event and just to get the ball rolling. Except for the Tyrant items. You're probably gonna get this from Magnus at some point and think like, oh wow, like it has pretty good stats, like 30 base attack and stuff like that, and it gets pretty good flames. Like I should probably star this. Do not Starforce these items, bro. Tyrants are what's known as like special items, or people just call them Tyrant items because they have their own specific Starforce cost for them only. So don't star them. It's not worth it. Just keep it at 0 stars. If you ever happen to wear it, just keep it at 0 stars. So how I'm going to structure this video is I'm going to go through every single different item slot and tell you how to Starforce the items and when you should. So this video is going to be broken down into like earrings, rings, pendants, hats, and so on. So the first thing that I want to talk about are the earrings. When you start going for Starforcing like actual like good items that can be past 15 stars and could go to 22, the main earring that you want to get is the superior earring. This is where most people are going to have. This is what by far most people are going to have, superior earrings. Eventually you'll get one from Golux. And the way that you want to star superior earrings is by transferring stars from reinforced earring to the superior earring. Now this is something that I didn't mention yet, but there's a thing in this game called Starforce transfer. So let me show you what Starforce transfer looks like. There's this little blue button right next to the red one for Starforcing, and how it works is you can transfer stars from items that are between 10 levels of each other. So for example, the reinforced Golux earrings are a level 140 item, but the superior Golux earrings are a level 150 item. So what that means is I could transfer stars from the reinforced earring to the superior earring. So for example, my reinforced earring are 16 stars right now, but if I were to transfer it to the superior Golux earring, it would be 15 stars. Very important to mention that whenever you transfer stars, you lose 1 star. But the reason why this is so good is because certain items are much harder to get than others. For example, superior Golux earrings earrings are a pretty rare drop and it takes a while to get them. Whereas reinforced earrings are very common. You get a lot of them. So because you get a lot of reinforced earrings, you would want to Starforce that item because you don't really risk anything if it gets destroyed. And once you get it to like 21 or 22, you could just transfer it to the superior. And now the superior got starred without risking any sort of destruction along the way. The other thing about Starforce that's really important is there are Starforce checkpoints. Like when you get to 10 stars, you can't go below 10 stars. You can only go up. When you get to 15, you can't go below 15. When you get to 20, you can't go below 20. So it can only go up. So a very, very common strategy is that people will get their reinforced Golux earrings to, let's say, 21, transfer it to superior, and the superior is at 20. So now all you have to do is Starforce from 20 to 22. It doesn't risk going down in Starforce. So the way that I would go about starring superior earrings is I would get a bunch of reinforced Golux earrings. I would try to Starforce them to either 21 or 22, and then I would send it to the superior earring. Now, what do you do in the meantime while you're waiting to get your superior earring? While you're waiting to get the superior earring, you could just leave the reinforced earring at like 16 or 17 stars until you get the sup earring to drop, and then you transfer it after that, and then you sit on your sup earring, leave it at 16 or 17 until you accumulate a lot of earrings. Then eventually you can transfer it and tap it to 22. But you might ask, should I transfer the reinforced earring at 21 or should I transfer it at 22? So if you transfer at 21, then the sup is staying at 20. If you transfer at 22, then the sup is staying at 21. The way that I would go about it is if you only have one sup earring and you know you're going to have to wait to accumulate a bunch of them, I would transfer the reinforced at 21 and leave the sup at 20. And then I would sit on that superior earring at 20 stars until I get a bunch more, and then eventually I'll tap it to 22. So that's the way I would go about it. Next is the Commanding Force earrings. These Commanding Force earrings, tap them to 22. That's it. Very simple. It's a level 200 item, so you can't transfer anything to it, and you want to get it to 22 stars. The thing is, you can't equip it right away because of set effects and how strong Golux is. I talk about it more in my gear progression video, but long story short, if you get this, you want to tap it to 22, and if it goes to 22, then you just keep it in the back until you can equip it. But superior earrings are essentially like the main earrings that you wear for a while. Now let's talk about rings. There's a lot of different rings, and let's talk about how you would Starforce all of them. Now, Guardian Angel Slime Ring is a level 160 item, and Superior Golux Ring is a level 150 item. So you might think like, oh, I could just use the Superior Golux Ring and transfer the stars on it to the Slime Ring, and that way I don't risk booming my Slime Ring. I would not recommend this at all. The reason for that is because Superior Golux Ring is so expensive to get multiple copies of. It costs 700 Golux coins, which takes about 4 weeks to get just one of them. I would not recommend this. I would highly recommend just getting to the point where you can solo Chaos Slime, which isn't as hard as you might think. You could do that with like 17, 18 star gear and just stacking a bunch of slime rings themselves and tapping the slime rings raw to 22. Now, you could settle 21 on slime ring. You could settle at 19, 18, just, you know, incrementally go up. However you want to do it, that's perfectly fine. But just know that you wouldn't want to transfer stars to it. Just star it straight as you're going along in your progression. If you're at the point where you want a 17 star all your gear across the board, sure, then just 17 star. If you want to go for higher stars and you don't have that many spares, you could settle 19, then settle 21, and then eventually 22 it. You don't have to go necessarily from 17 to 22 only. Superior Golux Ring. So Superior Golux Ring is one of, I'd say, the more difficult items to 22 star because booming it means you have to wait another 4 weeks to get another spare through Golux coins. So Superior Golux Ring is a level 150 item, and because it's a level 150 item, you can transfer 2 different rings to it. You could transfer the Conus Treasure or the Meister Ring to it because these are level 140 items. Both of these rings you would get in abundance because you can craft the Meister Ring, and Conus Treasure you have a chance of getting it every single week. So what I would do is I would highly recommend when you want to star the superior ring past 17, just getting one of these 2 rings to 21 and sending it to the sup ring, and the sup ring sits at 20. Now, I would let it sit at 20 until you are able to buy multiple sup rings, until you have a lot of coins sitting in the back. So for most people, this sup ring will probably be sitting at 20 for a long time just because it takes a while to accumulate Golux coins, and that's perfectly okay. And then eventually, once you have 700 Golux coins spare remaining, you are able to tap this from 20 to 22, and if it goes goes, it goes. If it doesn't go, then you just buy another one, get it to 17, and wait till you could get more spares. Now, Meister and Kana's Treasure. So these two rings, like I said, you can get a lot of them. So I would just Starforce them straight to 22 or even 21 if you want to settle temporarily for a lot of, if you don't have a lot of money left and you want to just settle temporarily, I would just settle, that's fine. But eventually you would want to 22 star them. These are really easy to 22 star because they're so cheap and you don't necessarily have to safeguard them. Oh, I should have mentioned that for the slime ring, you should definitely safeguard it 100%. But you don't necessarily have to safeguard these two items because you get so many of them. If you have, I would say like less than 4 of them, then I would safeguard it because you don't have that many. But if you have more than 4, let's say you have like 7, 8 in the back, like you don't have to safeguard it. That's fine. You have a bunch of them. So that's the way I would Starforce this. Endless Terror. Now, this is a very interesting item because the Endless Terror is a level 200 ring. If we go over these rings, let's talk about what level they are. Slime is 160, Sup is 150, and these two are level 140, which means that this level 200 item has way higher stats than these other rings because it's a way higher level. So when you're looking at your 4 rings, if you were to get Endless Terror, you would just replace one of these two. You would replace Meister or Kana's Treasure because the Endless Terror has way more stats. Turns out that the Endless Terror, even at just like 19 or 20 stars, is actually quite a bit stronger than the Meister ring or the Kana's Treasure. So I've seen a lot of people just settle 19, settle 21 on Endless Terror. And I mean, you could do that. Like, it is stronger than these two rings, but in all honesty, like, I would just try and get it to 22 just so you could get it over with and you have a complete pitch item. Let's be honest here, people are just gonna bother you permanently when they click on you and see your Endless Terrors like at 18 stars and you're just gonna get bullied for it. So let's try and 22 it here. But just know that like realistically, it does have better stats than these two. And even if you did want to settle at like 19 or 20, it would still be a pretty good increase in damage. I felt it would be irresponsible if I didn't say that, but like, you know, at the same time, like, come on, let's get it to 22. All right, let's talk about pendants now. Pendants, you have 2 slots for pendants, and the main one that you want to work on is your Superior Golix pendant. Now, the Superior Golix pendant, because it's a level 150 item, you can transfer Dominator pendant and Daybreak pendant, which are both level 140. So you could transfer stars from this one to Superior pendant. The way that I would go about it is I would try to get one of these to 21 and definitely safeguard the Dom pendant and the Daybreak pendant. It doesn't matter if you have like 10 spares, definitely safeguard them because they are so hard to get. It takes so long to accumulate these. So 100% safeguard it. You don't want to boom it from 16 to 17. So definitely safeguard them, get it to 21 and send it to the sub pendant and leave the sub pendant at 20 until you could buy more sub pendants. Until you have 700, 1400 coins remaining in the back, then you could tap it to 22. But for the meantime, I would just leave it at 20 stars and it'll be more than good enough in your progression to clear all the bosses that you're doing at that point in the game. Now, for your second pendant slot, you basically have 3 options. You could get a Dom pendant, Daybreak, or your Source of Suffering. These are the main 3 options. Some of you might say, oh, why not Sweetwater? Sweetwater is just like whatever. If you have an old one that's already pre-transposed, sure, you could get that one to 22. But nowadays, people don't really have that. So I would just choose one of these 3 options. If you get the Source of Suffering, I mean, we'll talk about it in a bit. But you basically have these 2 as your main options. The Dom pendant, you get it from Arcarium. If you happen to get it, send it to 22. Make sure you safeguard it. Same with the Daybreak. Send it to 22. Make sure you safeguard it. You can settle along the way. If you don't have enough money to 22 start, get it to 17, then 19, then 21. And 22. That's perfectly fine. Now let's talk about the Source of Suffering. This is a very interesting item because you could do a double transfer to get it to 22. This is the way I would get the Source of Suffering to 22. I would 22 star my either Dom or Daybreak, an extra one, send it to the sub. The sub will be at 21, and I would 22 star the sub pendant again, then send it to the source, and the source will be 21. Then you tap the source to 22. The thing is with the Source of Suffering is it's not like the Endless Terror where it's okay to be at 21 and it's still significant gains. You need this item at 22 stars because the stats aren't that crazy on it. If you compare 22 Source of Suffering to a 22 Daybreak, for example, you'll find that the stats aren't really like that different, and the Daybreak has an easier set effect to complete, so it makes it very negligible. You need it at 22 stars to have like a pretty significant increase in damage. If you have a Source of Suffering and you decide to settle 21 on it, it's going to take a lot of the pitch set effect for it to be meaningfully better than a Daybreak, so I would highly recommend trying to get the Source of Suffering to 22 stars. And this is the way I would go about it too. I wouldn't transfer the sub pendant at 21 and then leave this at 20 because the chance is lower than if you transferred the sup at 22. So I would definitely do it. Most people only have one try at doing this ever in their entire Maple career. So you want to do it with the highest statistic of passing, which is transferring the sup at 22. So that's the way I would go about that. Now let's talk about top, hat, and bottom. Now this is a little bit weird. So what you could do for the CRA for the meantime is you could transfer Pencilier gear to CRA. Like that is a perfectly fine option if you're very early into your progression and you don't have a lot of money or a lot of spares. Let's say you've only cleared CRA like 2-3 times. You don't have a ton of tokens so that you can just keep buying CRA spares over and over, but you still want to get it to like 17 stars and there's like a 5, 10, 15 event coming up. Then sure, you could farm a bunch of Pencilier, infinite amount of spares of these, get this to like 17 or even 16 and then transfer it to CRA hat and then get the CRA hat 16, 17 stars and settle on. That's fine. Overall works for both top and bottom. So you could do the exact same for those. But usually what people do is they get 17 star CRA and then throughout the many months of gameplay, you just have so many spares of these that they just send it to 22 stars. You don't even have to safeguard at all because you have like dozens and dozens and dozens of spares of these. So you could just send it to 22. Now, I know that some of you in chat are going to be like, but I boomed my hat like 50 times. I know, I get it. Like, you know, I've boomed my hat like over 50 times before as well in my life. But that's just the way these things go because you're not safeguarding. You have so many spares. You're probably going to boom them a lot. So that's the way that I would go about it. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated when we start talking about Eternals. Hey, if you don't want your items to look like this, then make sure to subscribe because obviously subscribing increases your Starforcing luck. Don't sue me on that. That's a joke. But you definitely should subscribe because it really does help me a lot. And pull up to my stream where you can interact with me all the time and we can have a really good time together. But with that all being said, let's get back to the video and I appreciate you guys so much. I have this handy dandy chart here with Eternals. Now, keep in mind a few things. This chart is approximations, right? It's not literally like exactly how much. It just depends on how good your gear is. So this chart is factoring in mind that you're liberated, which we'll talk about in a bit, but you have your liberated weapon. So that's the first thing. And your CRA is full 22 already, and it has a really good flame and it's perfect 3-line. So let's say, for example, you get your Eternal hat and you 17 star it. Just putting on your Eternal hat at 17 stars and nothing else is not stronger. You know what I mean? Like it's not a gain. It's not a gain. Assuming same amount of flame, assuming it's 3-line. Like if this hat was only 2-line and then you like double prime your hat, then yeah, it would be stronger, obviously. But assuming that the pot and flames are like equal tier, it wouldn't be stronger. So then you would have to get your hat to literally 22 stars for it to be significantly better, or for even any gain at all over your CRA hat. So that's one way that you could do your Eternals, is you would just get each piece to 22 at a time so that you can just replace each CRA piece one by one. That's one way. Or you could wait until you get all 3 Eternals, then get them all to 17 or 18 stars so that you have the 3 set, and it would be slightly better than your CRA. You'd be, you know, half a FD, 2 to 3 FD better than your CRA. You could also do that. So this is really just up to you. From my experience, what I did is I just set my hat to 22 because I wanted to just get this piece over with, and then I could use my callus and culling pieces on top and bottom and double it up. But some people, they decide to go 3 set first. They'll get it to 18 stars so that it's better than CRA. They'll just settle at 18. Then they'll get multiple copies in the future and send those separate copies to 22 so that way they don't risk anything in losing their Eternals, which, I mean, you could do that, but it just takes a lot longer that way, in my opinion. So either way is fine, to be honest with you. What I'm doing right now is because I 22'd my hat, I'm going to get 19 on my top and bottom, because with 22 hat and 19 top and bottom, it's actually a pretty significant increase because I have a lot of stars on my Eternals as a whole instead of just one piece being high star. Just in total they have a lot of stars, so that's what I'm doing, and it's safer that way. So there's a lot of different methods to starring your Eternals. You could just YOLO each one to 22 and that's fine as well. You could incrementally make them all go up, like you get them all to 17, then you get them all to 18, then you get them all to 19. That's called rouletting, and that's also fine. But rouletting just takes longer. Even if it's safer, it takes longer. You have to wait many more weeks to get more spares. So either one is fine. I just wanted to talk about both methods. Now let's talk about weapons. So Pencilier weapon, not a big deal. You could just transfer the Pencilier weapon to your CRA weapon as you get it. And you could go from like 16 star to 15 and then tap it again and it's 16. Then CRA weapon, you could transfer it to Absol weapon after that. The thing is though, I would never get these weapons past 16 stars, to be honest with you. Like, I just would keep my weapon at 16, then get my Abso to 16 as well. But after Abso, you can't transfer anymore. You could get the Abso to 17 if you want a little bit more damage. That's perfectly fine, but I would never go past 17. And then with that 17 weapon, I would wait until I got an Arcane weapon to drop. And once I got my Arcane weapon, I would always keep my Arcane weapon at 17 forever. I would never, ever, ever start past 17, even if you get multiple spares. Bro, I had like 8 Arcane weapons before I lived. Like, they just kept dropping, and I never started past 17. There is no point in starting it past 17 because all that money that you spend starting it past 17 could be used on all of your other gear, and all of those other gears are more permanent. So they'll give you the same damage, but they'll actually be more permanent and make your character stronger versus this weapon that gets replaced. So many people want to star their Arcane weapons just because they want to feel like they have a 22-star weapon, but in reality, it's just not a good play. Like, it's really just a waste of money. I know at the end of the day that there's still going to be people that are going to star their weapon, and it is what it is, but I tried my best. Because at the end of the day, you get the Genesis weapon, and the Genesis weapon comes at 22 stars, and you don't have to worry about Starforcing it at all, and that's it. You just get your Genesis weapon, and you're good to go for forever on your weapon. Now, let's talk about belts. So belts, the main belt that most people are going to want to work on is the Superior belt. Now, how do you get this Superior belt to 22 stars? There are actually 3 different belts that you can collect along the way that you can use to transfer to the Superior belt. You can get the Pink Bean belt, Ayame's Treasure belt from Princess Snow, and the Reinforced Skullix belt. Most people, as they're progressing, their inventory is going to be filled with so many of these belts because they're saving for a Starforce event to transfer stars from these to the Superior. Now, obviously, if you don't have a Superior, that's fine. Just keep any of these 3 belts at 17 and wait until you get a Superior belt. But once you want to get this star, the Superior belt start up, I would highly recommend getting any of these 3 belts to 21 and transferring to Superior belt and leaving the Superior belt at 20 until you get more Superior spares. If you have more Superior belt spares, of course, send it to 22. If you only have 1 Superior belt, let it sit at 20 for a while. If you have a bunch, you could even transfer at 22 and then tap from 21. That's fine as well. So most people, I feel, are probably only going to have 1 belt and they're just going to transfer at 21, let it sit at 20. Perfectly fine. Gives you a lot of damage and more than enough damage to train and to do your bosses in that point in the game. Now let's talk about the Dreamy belt. Dreamy belt is a level 200 belt, so you cannot transfer anything to it. And similar to the Commanding Force earrings, you can't really equip it right away, even if you 22 star it. The Dreamy belt does need to be at 22 stars to be a significant damage increase because the Superior belt has such insane stats on it that you would want the Dreamy belt to be at 22 for it to be a pretty good upgrade when you are able to wear it. You're not actually able to wear it because the Superior Golix set is so strong. You need a lot of the pitch set to be able to actually wear it, and it would be better. So that's what I would do if I had the belt. I would just send it to 22 whenever I had extra money. Now let's talk about the eye slot. So there are basically a few different options for eyes. I forgot to get the pop mark, but here it is. Most people, I would highly recommend just getting a black bead mark, getting it to 20 stars, and you could sit on that for a very long time, and that would be perfectly fine. Very easy to get from Pink Bean. Get it to 20 stars. You could get a lot of copies of these if you keep doing Pink Bean daily and weekly. You could even use one for training gear, and that would be fine. But for those who want more damage, and this is what I did personally because I wanted more damage, you could also get a Sweetwater monocle. Now, I got my Sweetwater monocle, and I just raw tapped it to 22. That's fine. You could do that. But for some of you who are lucky, you can actually get a Papulatus mark and transpose it to the Sweetwater monocle. Now, transposing is not the same as transferring stars. It's not the same. Transposing, what it means is it transfers the stats from one item to the next item. It's not just the Starforce, it transfers the stats. So when you transpose a Papulatus mark, it has to be 16 stars, and then you transpose it to a blank monocle. The reason why it's at 16 stars is, if you remember what I mentioned, once you're at 16 stars, you start getting attack on your equips, right? And when you're at 16 on the Populatus mark, it has a bit of attack on it because it's 16 stars. That bonus attack gets transferred to the base attack of the monocle. And because you're transposing, you lose 1 star. So this goes from 16 stars to the monocle goes to 15 stars. But the monocle still has the bonus attack that you got from the 16th star on it, but it starts at 15. So basically you got an extra star on your monocle because you transposed it. And that is a pretty good gain. And then you could get the monocle to 22 stars and you could just wear that. Even though the flame transfer isn't a thing anymore, it's still a pretty good upgrade. And for those who want to sweat as much damage as possible until they get the magic eye patch, that would be an option. I never got a pap mark in my progression, so I just YOLO'd my monocle to 22 stars, and it's more than good enough for me. It still gives me a lot of damage. But then eventually, if you get a magic eye patch, you must get it to 22 stars before it's really worth. And the reason why you need to get it to 22 stars is because the stats from a 22 monocle are so comparable to eye patch that you need the eye patch at 22 to be any significant gains. Because if it's not 22, then you might as well have gotten a monocle to 22 and it would be better for you. So it's not worth settling 21 on eye patch. Now let's talk about the face slot. Face slot, there are 2 things that I would do. So the first thing that I would do if I wanted to upgrade from the Zac face is I would just get a Sweetwater tattoo, keep it at 17 stars, and done. I wouldn't start any more past that. Obviously, the Zac face only goes to 10 stars, so it's not that good, and it doesn't give you that much attack. Sweetwater tattoo, very easy to get. You only need 1. You get it to 17, and you're done. You could use this Sweetwater tattoo until you get Twilight marks from H-Lucid and H-Will. Once you get Twilight marks, I would replace the tattoo, maybe turn it into training gear, and just use the Twilight mark at 17. And then eventually, when you get a lot of Twilight marks throughout just months of playing the game, you send it to 22. You could get it to 19, then 21, then 22. That's fine as well. But make sure you safeguard it and make sure that you have a lot of spares before you try to 22 it. If you are lucky enough to get a Berserked, then you must 22 star it. And the reason why you must 22 star the Berserk is because the Twilight mark at 22 has really comparable stats to it. So you need the Berserked at 22 to be any significant gains. You can't transfer stars or anything to it, so you need it to be at 22. Now let's talk about shoes. So for shoes, what you could do is the main shoe upgrade that you really go for first is Abso, and you could do a double transfer to Abso to make things a bit easier for you. You could get your Pencilier shoe to 16, transfer it to the Root Abyss shoe, which is at the top right of the Root Abyss map. You could just get the shoe there, and then transfer the Root Abyss shoe to the Abso, and then keep the Abso shoe at 16 or 17, and that's it. I would never start the Absos past 17, especially if it's your main. Just keep it at 17. You're good to go. And you could do that for the other items too. You could do it with the Pencilier gloves. You could just transfer it to the Root Abyss glove, which is in the Magnus shop. And I'm actually going to show you where the Magnus shop is because some people don't know where it is. You go to Grandis, Helicium, Black Market, talk to this dude, and it's in the special tab over here, Antique Root Gloves. And you could do the exact same thing. Double transfer, get your Absolabs 17, keep it. Now, a lot of you are probably saying, what about the Japanese set? What about like Ranmaru Amaterasu set? Sure, you could do that. But in all honesty, if it's your main, you really don't need these equips because these 3 items are like, you get so many of them that it's fine. You're only getting the Absols to 17 regardless, so I wouldn't bother needing like a massive amount of spares when you could just buy these spares whenever you want. You could do the exact same for the shoulder. Transfer from this to the shoulder, get the shoulder 17, settle. Enraged Zachem Cape, you get it from killing Chaos Zac, and he can drop one every week. Save a few of these, use it, get it to 16, transfer to Abso, get the Abso to 17, and then you're good. Your Abso's at 17 stars, and if it's your main, I wouldn't bother because 17 Absos are perfectly more than enough damage to do up to even a Black Mage, to be honest with you, and you'll get your Arcane armors just from doing weekly bosses. Now let's talk about Arcanes though. So Arcanes, you cannot transfer stars to them, so you're gonna actually have to star them up straight up. The thing about Arcanes is most people will just get them at 17 stars and you'll keep them for a while. So this is what I would do. I would get my Arcanes at 17 stars. I would only ever use my droplets on buying armors. I would never buy a weapon ever. I would only use my droplets on buying armors, and then that would be perfectly fine. And whenever I get an Arcane box, I would just redeem one of each as spare. This is the way I would go about it. So eventually you'll have like, you know, a bunch of shoes, bunch of gloves, bunch of shoulders, bunch of capes, you know, like that, like just one of each spare. And on a Starforce event, I would either do two things. You can either A, roulette your Arcanes, which means that they're all 17. Then you get them all to 18 across the board. Then you get them all to 19 across the board, and so on until eventually they're 22. Or let's say I have 3 shoe spares for whatever reason, right? I would keep trying to tap my shoe until it hit 22 and use up all my spares. If I don't have any spares left, then the last one, I would just get it to 17. And that's it. I would keep it. And then I would do the same with my gloves. I would tap my gloves until maybe it hit 22. If they all boom, then we just go back to 17. So the reason why this method is okay to do as well is it because if any of these hit 22, let's say the shoe and the glove actually did hit 22, then the spare boxes I get in the future could be concentrated much more on these equips, and I don't have to get any shoes or gloves anymore. If you're rouletting and then you run out of money, and let's say all of these are like 20 stars, right? Let's say they're all 20 stars across the board, and that's the way you got it. Then the next time you got a box, you're still gonna have to redeem a shoe and a glove just in case, even if they're all 20, because at the end of the day, they're not 22, and you don't have pure clarity on which one to redeem. So I think both options are fine. If you do it this way, where you're rouletting, it's going to take a lot longer, but it's safer gains. Like, you'll get more guaranteed gains across your Arcanes, but it'll take longer. Or if you just concentrate the boxes on one piece until you get it to 22, then you would eliminate pieces faster and you would know what to do with your boxes. So both options are fine, I feel. Now you might ask, do I really need 22-star Arcanes? Do I really need them with Eternal sets coming out? In my opinion, I think you should still get 22-star Arcanes with how abundant boxes are. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, I don't get any boxes. I don't get any boxes. Trust me, if you keep doing, like, if you actually do all the bosses, hard Darkanel, not normal, hard Vihila, not normal, like if you actually do the hard versions of the bosses, all of them every week, and Black Mage every month, you will get boxes. Like, you're eventually gonna get them as well. I think you should definitely 22 them, because these boxes will just keep, you're just gonna keep getting them week after week. Eventually, if you keep playing this game, you're gonna get a bunch of them. There's no way that like you play for like a year straight or something and you got literally 0 boxes. Like, I just refuse to believe that ever fucking happens. There was a dude, this is a little bit of a side note, but there was a dude who told me he boomed 40 capes. I just find that so unbelievable. Like, imagine 40 capes. This is what 40 capes look like. Like, do y'all believe this? Like, do y'all really believe somebody boomed 40 capes? Like that's just I don't know, whatever, this is besides the point. So yes, I would try to get my Arcanes to 22. Even though Eternals are coming out that are going to replace all of them, I would still try and get them to 22, because it's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not too difficult to do, and they give you a lot of stats. Now let's talk about the Eternal Shoulder. So here's the thing about the Eternal Shoulder that's a little weird. Because the Arcanes have such good stats, you actually need this to be at 22. And not only do you need this at 22, you probably need the other Eternals also at 22 for it to be significantly better, to be honest with you. Because the Arcanes have such good stats. Like, these pieces are replacing CRA. CRA is level 150 gear. It's old. These are level 250 gear, so their stats are way crazier. But Arcane is level 200 gear. Like, it's not as easy to replace an Arcane than CRA. So I would definitely try getting the Eternal Shoulder to 22 stars, but this is the last Eternal that I would do. Of the Eternals that are out right now, I would highly recommend prioritizing these 3 because you're replacing CRA versus trying to prioritize the Shoulder, for example, because the Arcane Shoulder is still super duper strong. Now, last but not least, let's talk about hearts. So these are the 2 main hearts that people probably have. Fairy Heart that you get through events, and One Droid Heart if you're a little bit older and did the One Droid event. Both of these have like whatever stats. Fairy Heart goes only to 8 star. One Droid only goes to 15, so it's just not a big deal. Now, the more interesting conversation is Black Heart versus the Total Control Heart. Yup, Total Control. Now, a lot of people, when you get much further into endgame, you're going to get a lot of these Black Heart drops from Lotus. Let's say you have multiple Hyper Burns, you've been playing for a while, and they could also do Lotus. You're going to have a lot of these Black Hearts. Now, this Black Heart, the stats on it are really, really good. It has like kind of special stats where it has a 30% boss, 30% IED on it, is part of the pitch set, and has 77 attack on it. So you can't star it. It's perm 15 stars, but it's temporary. The Black Heart, when you use it, it's a temporary item. The Total Control item, if you were to get it at 19 stars, would actually be slightly better than the Black Heart. So for people who have a ton of Black Hearts that are just popping them month after month. If you were to get a total control and get it to 19, then it would be permanently better than the black heart, and you could just sit on this until you get another one, and then you 22 the spare. But for most people, they're not going to have a bunch of black hearts, and if you happen to get a total control, you clear Extreme Lotus, you're 285 plus and you're doing it, most people are probably just going to settle 17 on this because it's just going to replace their rinky dink fairy heart, and it'll be a very significant upgrade just at 17 stars, and you could just keep it there until you get multiple. And then once you get multiple, you could just YOLO the other ones to 22, and then you'll be good to go. Now, the reason why for total control it's okay to just settle 17 star right away is because the alternative is so shit. The alternative is only 8 stars. So 17 star is a really big increase. Some of you might think like, oh, but you said like Dreamy Bell and Eye Patch and Berserk, like you had to get it to 22. Yes, the reason why you have to get it to 22 is because the alternatives are really, really good, and you have to get it to 22 for it to be better. Whereas for the total control, even at 17, it's way better. So you could equip it at that. But that's about it for this video. Obviously, if you have any questions, make sure you leave a comment. You can leave comments on this video in the future. I'll get back to them. And when there's a Starforce event, I'm sure this video might be useful. So definitely let me know if you have any questions or if you found this video useful. 100% leave a comment. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe. It really does help me a lot. And you pull up to my stream where you can see me Starforce my items and ask me questions live whenever you want. With that all being said though, I hope you have a wonderful day. Shout out to my members: Blazefire, Shooms, Uju, Shagad, Ravi Espa, Koga, Pabo, Piconir, Jesse B, Dante Victory, Zats MS, CK, Assassin 510, and Prelman. I appreciate you guys so much. And shout out to all the wonderful fan art. It's so sick, and thank you for sending it.